Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to make a zombie horde game in Unity 5 and welcome to episode 2. So this episode we're going to do a little bit of scripting with some C# and we're going to build up our little environment some more. So firstly, let's take a look at our room. It's pretty standard, so let's expand it just a little bit and import a couple of objects to make it look a little bit more fun. So I'm going to take that out and I'm going to just expand. In fact, I'll expand walls the other way, I think. Let's see which way I can have this. So I'm thinking, let's take this and expand it to 10 and rotate 0. And let's have a look. Let's try 180. Okay, so we'll have that and we'll just bring it out this way. So the idea of what I'm doing here is making a bit more of a larger environment that we can actually play around in, rather than just have a standard sized room. So it's nothing too spectacular. You feel free to build it as you want. And the reason I'm doing this at the moment is to give us a bit more space to play around in. So I'm going to bring that to there. Bring this across a little more. To about there. Now, theoretically, what you could actually do with this kind of environment is build something in something like perhaps Blender and then bring it into Unity as one complete object. It's entirely up to you how it's done. I mean, a lot of people do that and it probably is easier, but sometimes it's nice to get a nice visualization of how the level looks by doing it this way. I've always found it nice this way. So I'm just going to do this a little more. So we'll leave it there, bring in this wall across, I think. Then we'll sort out the roof up here. Let's bring that across to there. And this across to there. Okay, so it's a bit bigger now. We have some stuff to play around in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in our character. So I'm sure you know by now, if we go in our asset window, right click and import package, we can import our characters. It'll take just a second. So let's see, standard assets. We only want the character for now. So let's get rid of what we don't need. In fact, let's keep cross-platform input for now. So we'll get rid of the others and import. So if you don't have that, you can head to the Unity 3D website, head to the download page and download the standard assets and you'll be able to get them from there. And we're nearly there now. So I'm sure you guys know by now, it really is a case of just dragging and dropping. Okay, it's telling us we need to import everything else. We probably should have imported everything. It wouldn't have made much of a difference. So let's import everything we do need. Okay, there we go. So let's take our character, excuse me, prefab, FPS controller, in we go. There we go, and let's press play and have a quick look around. So I think the lighting needs to be played around with a little bit, so we'll look at doing that in the next episode. Excuse me. Okay, so let's bring in some stuff to have around our scene. So let's right click and create a new folder. And let's just call this objects. And in there, I'm going to drag and drop these two objects here, just an armchair and a bed, real simple. Import them into Unity, and if you head to the website jvunity.com and go to downloads and assets, you can download them there for free. So let's bring in our armchair. It's nothing too spectacular. Let's increase the size. In fact, we'll change it to 3. I think that looks a good size. We'll bring it up against the floor and let's sort out the material. So the material itself by default may change to just material and we want it to be leather. So let's take that material And let's drag and drop our leather onto the albedo. And let's drag and drop the normal map onto the normal map. Okay, so it's looking fairly decent. Like it would fit in, at least with this scene. So let's have a little play and place. And let's have another one somewhere over the other side. Over here, maybe. In fact, I'll just rotate like this. Let's have it facing that way. And let's have the bed. So we can, should be able to, in fact, we'll import, sorry, we'll drag and drop the whole thing and get rid of the plane that's on there. So the bed and get rid of plane. Bed is huge. So let's rescale. Let's have it as 0.005, 0.005, 0.005. And zoom in. So it's quite small, just need to bring it up a little. Let's have it as 0.05, 0.05, 0.05. Still quite big. Let's reduce it some. 2, 2, and 2. Okay, so that looks a bit better. Let's have that there. And pressed up against the wall. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we can play around and create an environment with. So let's create a script now to spawn our character. So in this style of game, obviously when you die, you get hit, you'll want your character to respawn. So I'm going to take a little twist on that. I'm going to make our character respawn either this corridor, this room, or this little corridor here. So firstly, let's set a couple of, let's call them spawn points. So game object, 3D object, and let's do cylinder. I'm going to shrink the size of it. Let's have 0.1 as the size there. And I'm going to put it here, I think. Okay, that looks fine actually. I'm quite happy with that. Let's right click and rename, have spawn 001. Duplicate, and let's have it the other side of the room because we want it about here, I think. Yeah, that looks fine there. Let's call that spawn 002, and let's dupe again, Control D as you should know, and let's bring it into the room. There's fine. Okay. Let's rename that as spawn 003. Okay, so now let's get writing a script where we can spawn on any one of these spawn points. So let's create a brand new folder and let's call it scripts. So we'll be doing this in C#. If by chance you want JavaScript, I'll tell you what, I'll leave the JavaScript version in the description below. Just make things a bit easier if you want to do that, but I would recommend C# ultimately. So I'm going to call this spawn script. Let's open it up in MonoDevelop or Visual Studio, whichever one you use. Right then. So when it opens up, we just need to get rid of, let's get rid of the update because we don't need that. And let's get rid of this little note here. So firstly, let's declare all the variables we're going to need. And there's going to be a total of 5 variables. So obviously we're going to need a variable for each of the spawn points. We're going to need an integer to generate a random spawn point, and we're going to need a variable for our player. So public game object, and it's going to be spawn 1. So you probably guessed it by now. Game object spawn 2 and public game object spawn 3. So there's our 3 spawn points declared. Let's declare our integer, which is going to be the location generator. So public int, and let's call it location gen. Nice and simple. And the last one is going to be the player. So public game object the player. So all we need to do is in our start function, so under void start, we need to firstly generate the random number that's going to define either spawn point 1, 2, or 3. So it's going to be location gen equals, and it's going to be random dot range open bracket 1, 4. So although we're dealing with just 3 spawn points, a fun little fact about random.range is it will never generate the maximum value you declare here, even though it says it's inclusive. It's just one of them little quirks or perks or whatever you want to call them of Unity. So whatever you have, if you, for example, have 5 spawn points that you want to use, then your random.range value will be 1 to 6. So you always go 1 higher than what you actually need in random.range. So we just need to do an if statement now. So if location gen equals, in fact that'll be a double equals, sorry, 1, open curly bracket, we need to put the player in the position of spawn point 1. And we can do that by going the player dot transform dot position, and remember they are lowercase on transform and position. They have to be lowercase. Is equal to spawn 1 dot transform dot position, semicolon, and then close curly bracket. So we need to repeat that if statement for spawn location 2 and 3. So we can copy, paste. So we need 2, and then change spawn 1 to spawn 2. And then finally, spawn 3 point, change there, and save. So effectively, what we're going to do with this script is, for now, we're just going to use it when we start up the game. So if we go to game object and create an empty game object, right click, rename, let's call this spawn generator, and let's drag and drop our spawn script onto that object. You can see it's over here in our inspector panel. So let's drag and drop what we need for the variables. So spawn 1, spawn 2, spawn 3, and finally our player FPS controller. Now let's save our project. So hopefully when we start the game now, we should start on either this spawn point, or the spawn point down there. So let's press play and check it out. So we've started here on this spawn point. Let's press play again. Same one. So let's hopefully try again. Are we generating the same one each time? I think we are here. There we go. We're in a different one now. What are the odds of that? We generated the exact same one each and every time. That's mad. Oh, look at the wall there. I like that. Okay, so we've simulated how we technically would die. So as this script stands at the moment, if we start our game, we would generate somewhere randomly. If we, for example, start playing and we die, as soon as we die, we'd want to run this script. So we can sort that out at a later time when we have our zombies in the game. So next episode, what I want to do is add a bit more to this level. I want to add some lighting, and I want to bring in our first zombie and program the zombie to instantiate or spawn itself and hopefully come after us. So what I would recommend at this point, feel free to head to any website you want or the asset store, and you can download some assets and just build up this little area as much as you need to. I think when we first started doing this series in the first episode, it looked quite neat in here, but I'm not too sure about how it looks now, especially with the lighting. So next episode, I really want to focus on that lighting and possible camera effects to make things look bigger, better, brighter, or darker if you wish, and just overall quality. So yeah, until next episode, guys, you build what you need, and yeah, assets in there, and just be prepared for the next episode. Guys, thanks for watching.